Hey, it's Soul, and this is the World of Warcraft. Today's video is going to look ahead at the future of the World of Warcraft. I know that there's still 7.3 and 7.3.5 and 7 who knows what, but now that we're seeing a lot of these components in place, we can kind of step back and assess these things and then look at the next expansion and wonder, well, just what do we want to see? What stuff do we just expect to come? And what are the things we don't want to see? So let's get started. Let's start with what I'm hoping or looking forward to. This is regarding flight, which is something that I do fully expect to happen in some way, shape, or form in the next expansion, but something that I've been really unhappy about with both Warlords and with Legion is that flight doesn't really mean much. Back in the day with Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm and Mist of Pandaria, flying had kind of a purpose. Flying gave us access to new factions and quests and dailies and what have you, but with Legion, flying is just an achievement. A good chunk of us might be happy or at least satisfied with a Pathfinder-like system, but my big gripe with that is that flight just wasn't sold the way that I thought it would be. It doesn't give you anything new to explore. There are no new factions to meet up with. There's no dailies or no nooks or crannies or rares to find. So I'm going to assume that flight will be in the next expansion, and I don't care how it's unlocked or when it's unlocked, I just want it to give us something new to do. I want the new map and these new gameplay systems to be built around flight. All to give it a little bit more meaning, a little bit more depth. As far as I'm concerned, Legion could care less if we could fly. And we did work pretty hard to get flying, and the fact that it doesn't give us access to anything, and the fact that 7.3 will not allow us to fly in Argus, it just kind of sends me that message that, well, Legion, again, doesn't care about flight. I really want the next expansion to care. I want to see a lot more world quests. I think that by far this is one of the best features in Legion. I think it's great that there's pretty much always something there to do, and at the same time, it's optional. We don't really have to do it because it's futile to try. But while I'm happy with the world quests, I think that there can be an improvement done, especially with how they're delivered, in the sense that they should kind of progress as we wrap up with certain factions that are involved in the area. This is done at a few levels, most notably in the Suramar area, but I think a whole lot more could be done. By far, my favorite kind of reputation/daily questing is with Mist of Pandaria. Notably because as you unlock a new reputation level, you get a new kind of layer of quests to do, and I think that could be delivered with world quests. Mist of Pandaria topped this off with a final questline once you hit Exalted, where you pretty much cap the story that involved the faction in the area. And Legion isn't over, so for all we know we might get something like this in 7.3. But I'm definitely looking forward to something like this in the next expansion, or beyond that. Mythic Keystone Dungeons are another one of those really awesome and brilliant systems that I really think should follow into future content. With Keystone Dungeons as a legitimate way to progress our characters, it wouldn't come at any surprise if Blizzard were to present certain data that talks about just how much more people were running dungeons these days than before. The one thing that I'm a little bit skeptical about is whether or not there should still be a weekly chest with goodies inside. I mean, it is nice to have that guaranteed piece of loot at least once per week, but I don't know, and it's not like I have any good ideas off the top of my head. It's just that I hope that in the future that there are some new improvements and refinements to the system. So there are a few things that I totally expect to happen. I don't really feel good about them, I don't feel really bad about them. I'm just going to talk about things that I just expect. I do expect a new version of the Garrison/overhaul system. Now, something very important to point out first is that both the Garrison and the overhaul system, they kind of write a certain narrative around our characters. We ran the Garrison as commanders, and we currently run our overhaul as class overhaul leaders, or whatever title that you have. A similar system like this will insist that we have some sort of high leadership role. And I already have my personal thoughts on how I don't want to have a leadership role or any sort of major role as a character, but there's probably going to be something that allows for this whole paradigm of having some limited offline progression. And we're obviously used to this. I mean, we had this ever since the Mist of Pandaria farm. Some theorists are thinking that in the next expansion we're going to be exploring the South Seas and we're going to have our own boat. But who knows? A system like this certainly does need to have a narrative written around it for it to make sense. And Blizzard has gone on record many times to say that if a certain system makes sense, they'll go through with it. Something else that I guess I've been anxiously waiting for is for character development, things like talents or whatnot, to just be turned upside its head all over again. I've talked about talents many times, but the fact of the matter is we've had this current talent system for what's now going to be 3 expansions. And in the World of Warcraft timeline, that's a really long time. In fact, we'll have had this version of the talent system just as long as we have had the original talent system. I've shared my thoughts on this, but I at least think that the current talent system is outdated to the point where there are other systems that Blizzard can use and have used to sort of replace it. And Blizzard does like changing things up every now and then to keep things fresh. Whether you like it or not, I have no idea. But I think it's been long enough that I'm sure Blizzard has thought of all sorts of other different ideas, and who knows, we might see something soon. The last thing I'm expecting is for the expansion to have a sort of level scaling component, similar or pretty much the same as what Legion has. In my opinion at least, it more or less works. We choose the zone we want, we can leave whenever we want. The only thing that restricts us are actual level requirements that hold us back a little bit. I do wonder though if they're going to revisit the idea of item level scaling at max level. I get that it can do weird things. Item level scaling was around in Legion, but it was significantly nerfed. Pretty much to the point where it's irrelevant, or for all I know it's already gone. But if it did persist, we'd probably see something really weird at high item levels, like for example mobs would be hitting harder in the outside world than it would be in a Mythic 5 or something. I'm probably exaggerating, but that was a legitimate fear among players. I just think though that if Blizzard gets the system right and announces it well ahead of time, players aren't going to notice a damn thing. And even though this is kind of a mixed bag, people have different feelings about this, I fully expect Blizzard to push the paradigm where they want to make all content feel relevant. By this I'm talking about how LFR might drop a Titan Forged thing. Opening some random box off a world quest might give you a legendary. And the reasoning behind that has its merits. One of the big points is to make people feel good about helping each other. I should be good with helping a friend level low-level dungeons if that means I get a small chance to get something like artifact power or a legendary or a Titan Forged thing. Personally, I think that paradigm has gone too far, especially with Titan Forging. I do think that there is an appropriate line that can be crossed where going beyond that, you just don't want to do certain content anymore because it is too trivial. I'd be better off carrying my friend through slightly higher level content instead of going down to their level and doing this, easy low level content and hoping for the best. As for where to draw that line, I have no idea, but I just think that that whole paradigm can be scaled back at least just a little bit. At least to avoid some of the extreme stories of getting a super awesome item from a normal heroic dungeon. So what about the things that I don't want to see? And this is your chance to celebrate all the things that Soul just doesn't like. Titan Forging. It's a system that's cool when it happens to you, and it sucks when it happens to someone next to you. Now this is just a symptom of what I was talking about just earlier with this whole paradigm of content staying relevant. Titan Forging is just one thing, but I think that from an optics and a perception level, I think it's gone a little bit too far. The coolness factor in Titan Forging comes in the form of, just getting something pretty awesome. And this is all because you were just farming lower level content or you're just helping a friend. But what Titan Forging is, unfortunately it's not just a bonus, as I would love to preach. Many players do see this as a progression system, they just see it as one based on luck. I'd like to think that there are better ways to make more trivial content still give players a small but meaningful return for their time, but of course I'm not going to be able to explain it here, I have no idea what that would be. There are a ton of discussions and theories and ideas on how we can possibly progress our gear through different ways. I'm not fond of Legendaries. I don't like that they're random, I don't like that they're powerful. I don't like that my ability to hit 5 targets with my Avenger Shield used to be something baseline that I had in Warlords of Draenor through a leveling perk. I don't like how this system is literally major glyphs. Critics have argued that maybe Legendary should have been strictly utility based, and Ian Hezekiah has been on record to say the same thing. I mostly agree, but I also think of the gear that we would also get from the Archway or the Court of Stars or from even Karazhan. Some of this kind of sort of special gear had small bonuses to them or smaller set bonuses, and I thought those were cool. I think if we had a bigger allotment of these items that were just kind of scattered about throughout the entire expansion's raids or dungeons, I think that would be of benefit. They're not as game-changing as Legendaries are, but they're still kind of powerful and neat. And I think that's as far as it should have went. I'm not very fond of the artifact progression system. It's pretty boring because there aren't any real choices to make. You can branch off in different directions, but essentially you're still just going forward. The progression system, it's fixed. It's expected. It's boring. 7.3 hopes to remedy this through the Netherlight Crucible system. It's to take that one agency of choice that we have, which is the artifact relics, and turns it into a system that, well, to be honest, I can't really explain yet because it hasn't been fully developed yet. It wouldn't surprise me that much if a progression system like this were to return in the future, but I hope it's a little bit more interesting than the current artifact system. The last thing that I hope does not come back, and from the feedback regarding patch 7.2, I hope that, funny enough, that there is less exclusive content. And by this I'm talking about the different artifact quest lines, the class campaigns, the profession quest lines. All of these different quest lines put together comprise a huge chunk of Legion content, and it's part of what defines Legion as an expansion that delivers tons and tons of things to do. The problem is, in order to do all this content, you need to have rolled every class, every spec, every profession, and so on. The way that I see it, and I could be wrong, having all this exclusive content subtracted from what could have been contents that all of us could have enjoyed together. And by that, I'm talking about maybe a better delivery of 7.2's content. Maybe we could have had a capstone questline for each of the factions. Maybe there could have been more follow-up on the Horde and Alliance conflict. And from the look and feel of it with 7.3, that seemed to be kind of happening now. There's a lot of stuff for everyone to do together, and while there are a few exclusive things mostly related to professions, it's pretty minimal. So I do hope that in the future, instead of having so much exclusive content, we see more that everyone can do together, and on top of that, the options to do it or not. Anyway, that's the video, and I just wanted to talk for a few minutes. Support me the best way you know how, otherwise, share your thoughts, and stay breezy.